Everyone, today I want to talk about a challenge we all face at some point, dealing with toxic people. These are the people who drain your energy, stir up drama, or try to bring you down. But what separates smart people from the rest is how they respond. Smart people understand that they can't control how others act, but they can control their response. They don't get caught up in the games, the gossip, or the negativity. Instead, they take a different approach, one based on self-respect, emotional intelligence, and peace of mind. First, they set boundaries. They are clear about what they will and won't accept, and they communicate those limits without apology. Second, they don't take things personally. Toxic people often project their issues onto others, but smart people know not to absorb that energy. Third, they stay calm and avoid drama. When others escalate, smart people de-escalate. They refuse to be pulled into unnecessary conflict. Fourth, they walk away if they must. If someone continues to be toxic despite boundaries and warnings, smart people don't hesitate to limit contact or cut ties altogether. And finally, they focus on themselves. They put their time and energy into things that help them grow, not people who drag them down. Sure, here's an expanded version of the first key point. Smart people know the power of setting boundaries, and they use it intentionally when dealing with toxic people. They understand that without clear boundaries, others may take advantage of their time, energy, and emotion. Toxic individuals often push limits to see how far they can go, whether it's constantly complaining, manipulating situations, crossing personal lines, or disrespecting others. But smart people don't allow that kind of behavior to continue unchecked. Setting boundaries isn't about being rude or cold. It's about self-respect. Smart individuals know it's not their job to fix or tolerate someone who refuses to take responsibility for their own behavior. They are not afraid to say no, to walk away from a toxic conversation, or to make it clear that certain topics, actions, or tones won't be entertained. They express their limits calmly but firmly, not to punish the other person, but to protect their own mental and emotional well-being. What's more, they follow through. Toxic people often test boundaries, looking for weakness or hesitation, but smart people remain consistent. If they say they won't respond to insults or manipulation, they stick to it. If they say they need space, they take it. Their consistency sends a powerful message that they will not be controlled, guilt-tripped, or emotionally drained. They don't just talk about boundaries, they live by them, and in doing so, they keep toxic influences in check without losing their own peace of mind. Smart people understand that when someone is toxic, their words and actions are often not a reflection of you, but a reflection of them. Toxic people tend to act out of their own pain, insecurities, jealousy, or unresolved trauma. They might criticize others harshly, spread negativity, or constantly try to bring people down. A person who is emotionally intelligent knows not to take these things personal. Instead of feeling wounded or defensive, they see toxic behavior for what it really is, a signal of that person's inner struggle, not a judgment of their own worth. This doesn't mean smart people are cold or unfeeling. It means they are grounded in a strong sense of self. They know who they are. They know their values, their intentions, and their strengths. So when a toxic person lashes out, they don't immediately question themselves or internalize the insult. They don't waste time overthinking or trying to win approval from someone who isn't emotionally healthy enough to offer it. Rather than reacting with anger or hurt, they pause, take a step back, and remind themselves that the issue lies with the toxic individual, not with them. This ability to separate someone else's negativity from their own identity is what allows smart people to stay calm and composed. They don't engage in a back and forth battle trying to defend their character or argue their worth. They understand that toxic people often feed off emotional reactions. By refusing to give them that reaction, smart people take away their power. They maintain emotional distance, keeping themselves safe from the chaos others try to create. This strength comes from deep emotional maturity, the kind that allows someone to rise above the noise instead of being pulled into it. Smart people know that toxic individuals often thrive on chaos, emotional outbursts, and reactive energy. They intentionally create conflict or provoke others because it gives them a sense of power and control. But smart people don't give them that satisfaction. They understand that reacting emotionally to a toxic person only feeds the fire, so instead they choose calm. They remain centered and composed, even in the face of manipulation, passive-aggressive behavior, or verbal attack. This isn't about weakness or avoidance. It's a strategic choice to protect their peace and keep their power. By staying calm, they keep the situation from escalating. Toxic people often look for a reaction as a way to draw someone into drama, but when the reaction doesn't come, the fuel runs out. Smart people respond rather than react. They take a breath, think before they speak, and assess whether the situation even deserves their energy. They don't raise their voice, argue endlessly, or try to win the conversation. Instead, they use silence, patience, and carefully chosen words to diffuse tension. This not only keeps them in control of their emotions, but it also sends a message that their peace of mind isn't easily shaken. Smart people also avoid gossip and emotional traps. Toxic individuals may try to involve others in petty conflicts, stir up drama behind the scenes, or pit people against each other. But smart people refuse to participate in those games. They don't entertain rumors or get involved in unnecessary arguments. They recognize when someone is trying to bait them, and they walk away from the conversation if it no longer serves a constructive purpose. They understand that drama is a distraction, and they simply don't have time. Their energy is reserved for things that matter, not for being pulled into a toxic person's emotional roller coaster. There comes a point when smart people realize that no amount of patience, kindness, or boundary setting will change someone who refuses to take accountability for their behavior. Toxic people often repeat the same harmful patterns, even after being given multiple chances to improve. That's why smart individuals aren't afraid to limit their contact or walk away entirely when someone continues to bring negativity into their life. They don't see walking away as giving up or being cruel. Instead, they see it as an act of self-preservation and self-respect. They understand that not everyone deserves a seat at the table of their life. When someone repeatedly disrespects them, manipulates situations, or creates emotional turmoil, smart people make the difficult but necessary decision to distance themselves. They recognize that keeping toxic people around can drain their energy, distort their sense of self-worth, and distract them from their goals. Rather than staying stuck in toxic cycles out of guilt, obligation, or fear of judgment, they prioritize their mental and emotional health. Sometimes this means reducing interactions, avoiding certain topics, or setting strict limits on the type of communication allowed. Other times, it means cutting ties completely and moving on. This decision isn't always easy, especially when the toxic person is someone close, a family member, a longtime friend, or even a partner. But smart people understand that healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, not one-sided compromise. They realize that true growth and peace often require letting go of those who continuously bring them down. They choose to surround themselves with people who uplift, support, and respect them, not those who constantly test their patience and drain their spirit. Walking away isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of knowing your worth and refusing to let someone else diminish it. Smart people understand that the best way to deal with toxic individuals is not by focusing on changing them, but by focusing on themselves. They know that the most powerful response to negativity is to continue growing, healing, and improving. Instead of wasting time trying to understand why someone acts the way they do or attempting to fix their toxic behavior, smart people shift that energy inward. They invest in their own peace of mind, emotional resilience, and personal goals. They understand that happiness and stability don't come from changing others, but from mastering their own mindset and direction in life. They prioritize self-care, not just as a routine, but as a lifestyle, whether it's through reading, therapy, meditation, exercise, journaling, or spending time with uplifting people, they consistently do things that build them up. They feed their mind with knowledge, their soul with calm, and their environment with positivity. This focus on inner peace makes them less reactive and more grounded, making it harder for toxic people to get under their skin. While toxic individuals may try to cause stress or chaos, smart people create balance in their own world so that outside negativity loses its power. In focusing on themselves, smart people also practice emotional detachment, not from caring, but from carrying the emotional weight of others. They refuse to let someone else's anger, bitterness, or insecurity define their day or their self-worth. They learn to let go of what isn't theirs to hold. They grow stronger with every experience, more aware of their boundaries, and more selective with their time and energy. Even when toxic people attempt to return or re-engage, smart people remain committed to their growth. They move forward, not backward. They understand that true strength isn't in controlling others, it's in mastering yourself, regardless of what others bring to the table. Smart people know that in order to protect their mental and emotional well-being, they need to create space, not just physically, but emotionally, from toxic individuals. Emotional detachment doesn't mean they don't care or that they're cold-hearted. It means they've learned to separate their own emotions and sense of identity from the toxic person's behavior. They don't allow someone else's moods, manipulations, or personal issues to take root in their own mind or heart. Instead, they observe what's happening without becoming entangled in it. This level of detachment helps them maintain clarity in the middle of chaos. When dealing with someone toxic, it's easy to get caught in a cycle of overthinking, emotional exhaustion, or even self-doubt. Toxic people are often skilled at making others feel guilty, confused, or unworthy. But emotionally intelligent people don't absorb these projections. They step back and look at the situation with a wider lens. They ask themselves, is this really about me, or is this reaction coming from someone else's personal struggle? That perspective allows them to remain in control of their own emotions, instead of becoming a puppet in someone else's drama. They also remind themselves not to take on responsibilities that aren't theirs. Toxic people often try to shift blame or avoid accountability by placing it on others. But smart people refuse to carry emotional baggage that doesn't belong to them. They don't try to fix people who don't want to be helped, and they don't let guilt or fear force them into unhealthy dynamics. Emotional detachment gives them the strength to walk away without resentment, to say no without guilt, and to protect their energy without feeling like they're doing something wrong. At the core of emotional detachment is the ability to observe rather than observe. Smart people are fully aware of their surroundings and the emotional dynamics in play, but they choose not to be controlled by them. They remain compassionate, but not codependent. They stay present, but not entangled. This mindset keeps their peace intact even when surrounded by negativity, and that peace becomes a powerful form of resistance against toxicity. Smart people understand that one of the most powerful tools they have when dealing with toxic individuals is the ability to respond with intention, rather than reacting out of impulse. Toxic people often rely on triggering emotional reactions. They provoke, insult, manipulate, or push boundaries with the goal of getting a quick emotional response. But smart individuals don't take the bait. They understand that reacting in the heat of the moment usually gives the toxic person what they want: attention, drama, and control. Instead, they pause, they assess the situation, and choose their response carefully based on their values and long-term peace of mind, not their momentary emotion. They might feel anger, frustration, or hurt, but they don't let those feelings drive their actions. They have learned to self-regulate, to step back and breathe before speaking or acting. This deliberate pause gives them space to ask themselves important questions like, is this worth my energy? What outcome do I want from this? Or how will I feel about this response tomorrow? This self-awareness helps them choose the high road even when the low road is more tempting in the moment. Their responses are calm, clear, and composed. They don't yell to be heard. They don't resort to personal attacks. They don't fight fire with fire. Instead, they use firm boundaries, confident language, and emotionally neutral tones. Sometimes their response is silent. Sometimes it's walking away, but whatever it is, it's chosen, not reflexive. This intentional approach takes practice, but over time, it becomes second nature. They no longer allow toxic people to hijack their emotions or dictate the tone of their day. By responding with intent, smart people not only protect their own peace, they also model healthy behavior. They show that it's possible to be strong without being aggressive, to be firm without being cruel, and to be in control without needing to control others. In doing so, they make it clear that they refuse to be pulled down by negativity and that their emotional stability is not up for negotiation. Smart people know that toxic individuals often attack where it hurts the most, your sense of self. They might use subtle jabs, backhanded compliments, criticism disguised as advice, or even outright insults to chip away at someone's confidence. These tactics are meant to create doubt, to make others question their value, and to keep them small and insecure. But smart individuals refuse to let toxic people define them. They don't allow someone else's opinion, especially when it comes from a place of bitterness, jealousy, or control, to shape the way they see themselves. They maintain a strong internal foundation. This doesn't mean they never struggle with self-doubt, but it does mean they have done the work to know who they are at their core. They've spent time getting to know their strengths, their values, and their worth independent of anyone else's approval. So when a toxic person tries to bring them down, they don't immediately absorb it as truth. Instead, they pause and question the source. Is this feedback coming from someone who truly knows me, respects me, and wants the best for me? If the answer is no, they let it go. Smart people also remind themselves that toxic criticism often says more about the other person than it does about them. A person who constantly tries to belittle others is often deeply insecure themselves. Rather than rising to the bait or falling into a spiral of self-criticism, smart individuals respond with clarity. They say to themselves, "This does not belong to me," and in doing so, they keep their identity intact, untangled from the negativity others try to wrap around them. They also understand the difference between growth-oriented feedback and manipulative criticism. Growth comes from honest reflection and constructive input, but toxic people don't offer that. Their words are not meant to help. They're meant to hurt or control. Smart people can tell the difference, and they're not afraid to reject harmful opinions, even if they come from people close to them. They don't chase validation, and they don't beg for acceptance. They validate themselves, knowing that no one has the right to rewrite their story or question their value without their permission. In the face of toxicity, smart people hold on to their self-worth like armor, quiet, powerful, and unshakable. That self-worth becomes a shield that protects them from manipulation, and it keeps them grounded even when others try to knock them off balance. Smart people understand that trying to change a toxic person through argument, confrontation, or emotional debate rarely leads to real growth or understanding. Toxic individuals often aren't interested in listening. They're more interested in being right, creating chaos, or shifting blame. When confronted, they may deflect, deny, or double down on their behavior. That's why smart people don't waste their breath trying to convince, correct, or control them through forceful conversations. Instead, they lead by example. They show through their own behavior how emotionally healthy people communicate, respond, and live. They practice the values they believe in: respect, calm, boundaries, and kindness, but they do so without expectation. They don't try to fix anyone with their goodness. Instead, they live with integrity regardless of who's watching. When toxic people are aggressive, they remain composed. When others gossip or spread negativity, they remove themselves without fanfare. When faced with provocation, they choose silence or a thoughtful response rather than adding fuel to the fire. Their behavior speaks louder than any argument ever could. This kind of leadership is quiet but powerful. It reminds others, sometimes even the toxic person, that there is a better way to interact, a higher road to take. And even if the toxic person doesn't change, smart people know they've done their part without lowering themselves. They don't need to prove anything in a shouting match or a back and forth filled with bitterness. Their strength is in their steadiness. They choose dignity over drama, self-respect over control, and peace over proving a point. Leading by example also influences the environment around them. While toxic people may try to dominate the atmosphere with negativity, smart individuals create a different tone, one of calm, maturity, and self-assurance. Others notice that and often feel inspired to follow suit. They become a stabilizing force in a chaotic dynamic simply by refusing to act in ways that compromise their character. They remind everyone, including themselves, that power doesn't lie in loudness or dominance, but in quiet self-control. So rather than arguing with toxic people about who's right or wrong, smart individuals simply live the answer, and in doing so, they maintain their peace, protect their energy, and set an unshakable example that speaks volumes, even in silence. Smart people understand that sometimes in order to preserve their peace, they have to make difficult decisions in the short term. They know that toxic people often thrive on quick, superficial interactions that allow them to control the narrative or manipulate situations to their benefit. In these interactions, they might appear charming, agreeable, or even apologetic, but underneath, their behavior remains unchanged. Smart individuals don't fall for these fleeting moments of civility. They're not interested in temporary pleasantries or surface-level harmony if it means compromising their long-term well-being. Instead, they focus on establishing a foundation of peace that lasts, even if it means creating some initial discomfort. They recognize that short-term avoidance or giving in to a toxic person's demands may seem easier in the moment, but it often leads to more frustration and stress down the road. Smart people are willing to have tough conversations, set firm boundaries, or even walk away from relationships that drain them, because they understand that true peace comes from consistency, not appeasement. They'd rather take a temporary hit in terms of a difficult conversation or a potentially uncomfortable moment than allow themselves to be stuck in a cycle of manipulation or emotional turmoil. They know that their long-term mental, emotional, and physical health is worth far more than a momentary attempt to please someone who doesn't have their best interests at heart. By prioritizing long-term peace, they also acknowledge that it's better to let go of toxic people who don't bring value into their lives. While some may cling to the hope that their relationship with a toxic person will improve or that things will go back to normal, smart individuals understand that some situations are beyond repair. They recognize that ultimately peace cannot be forced or negotiated. It must come naturally. Sometimes this means stepping away, even if it's painful, knowing that it will create space for healthier, more fulfilling relationships to grow. This focus on long-term peace requires patience, wisdom, and a commitment to self. Smart people are not in a hurry to fix everything or make everyone happy. They're willing to let go of short-term discomfort in favor of long-term harmony and growth. Their peace of mind becomes a priority above all else because they know that it's the foundation for everything else in their life. Once they make this decision, they become stronger, more resilient, and more capable of facing the challenges that life presents, without the need to sacrifice their inner tranquility.